March 1943, North Atlantic. Steel walls sweat with condensation as the submarine slips deeper beneath the waves. Inside the German U-boat, the air is stale, heavy with diesel and fear. Men move slowly now, every sound matters, boots scrape the deck. A valve hisses, the hull groans under pressure. This boat has survived weeks at sea, evaded aircraft, slipped past escorts. Until now. Then it comes. A sound not felt, but known, a sharp, rhythmic pulse slicing through the water, too steady, too precise. American Sonar, the captain of the U-boat, veteran of countless patrols under the banner of the Kriegsmarine, stiffens. He does not shout. He does not move, he listens. Each returning echo draws closer, tighter. The ocean itself has begun to speak back. Above them, unseen, ships of the United States Navy adjust their course. Calculations are made, depths measured, speed corrected. This is no longer a hunt dot, it is a lock dot, and somewhere in the black water of the Battle of the Atlantic, the sea prepares to erupt. September 1939. Europe falls into war, and with it the oceans become battlegrounds without borders. For Germany, the surface fleet is a liability. Battleships are few, fuel is scarce. Britain, an island nation, lives and breathes by sea lanes. The answer, conceived years earlier, lies beneath the waves, the submarine. Under the leadership of Karl Dönitz, the German Navy refines a doctrine built on patience, coordination, and invisibility. The U-boat is not meant to fight ships. It is meant to erase them silently, efficiently, and in numbers. One convoy sinking at a time. By 1940, the strategy begins to work. Merchant ships vanish into the Atlantic night. Oil tankers erupt into pillars of flame. Lifeboats drift for days. Britain bleeds tonnage faster than it can replace it. The sea routes between North America and Europe stretch long and thin. Destroyers rely on eyesight and luck. Air patrols are limited by range, leaving vast air gaps where convoys sail blind and exposed. Commanders learn the rhythms of convoys, the speed, spacing, and defensive patterns. Wolf packs form across hundreds of miles, coordinated by radio, converging on targets like predators responding to a signal. Inside these steel vessels, conditions are brutal but familiar. No showers, limited fresh water, rotting food. Constant dampness, yet morale remains high. Each successful patrol reinforces the belief that the Atlantic belongs to them. By 1941, the tonnage war intensifies. The United States, still officially neutral, escorts convoys partway across the Atlantic. Incidents mount. Shots are exchanged. When America enters the war in December, German commanders see opportunity, not danger. The U.S. coastline is poorly defended. Cities blaze at night, silhouetting ships offshore. Operation Paukenschlag, drumbeat, begins in early 1942. The boats patrol the American seaboard with astonishing ease. Tankers burn within sight of shore. Survivors wash up on beaches. The numbers climb again. But beneath the surface of these victories, something is changing. The Allies are learning. British scientists refine underwater detection systems first developed before the war. What was once experimental becomes standardized. Escort crews train relentlessly. Patterns are tested. Failures analyzed. Each lost ship becomes data. At the heart of this shift is sonar, known to the Allies as ASTIC. Unlike hydrophones, which passively listen, sonar speaks. It sends a pulse through the water and waits for the echo to return. Steel hulls answer loudly. Distance can be measured, bearing calculated, movement tracked. At first, sonar is unreliable at speed or in rough seas. Skilled U-boat captains exploit its weaknesses. Diving deep, changing course, hugging thermal layers. Many escape, some do not. The battle becomes a contest of adaptation. Convoys grow larger. Escort numbers increase. Destroyers learn to hold contact rather than rush attacks. Communication improves. Radar joins sonar, allowing surface ships to see at night and in fog. Aircraft push farther out to sea. By late 1942, losses on both sides mount, but the balance is no longer stable. They must. Retreat would concede the war at sea. Orders continue. Boats sail. Crews submerge into the Atlantic once more, trusting experience and silence. Yet the ocean is no longer empty. It is watched, measured, calculated. And soon, for the first time, many U-boat captains will realize they are no longer the hunters but the hunted. By early 1943, the Atlantic has changed its character. What once felt vast and unknowable is now being carved into grids, patrol boxes, and plotted routes. The Allies no longer react to boat attacks, they anticipate them. Patterns emerge from months of convoy reports, radio intercepts, and survivor testimony. The sea begins to give up its secrets. At the center of this transformation is coordination. Surface escorts are no longer lone destroyers racing blindly toward explosions on the horizon. A single sonar contact is no longer a fleeting chance, it becomes a sustained pursuit. New technology accelerates the shift. Aircraft fitted with long-range fuel tanks close the mid-Atlantic air gap that once offered German submarines sanctuary. Even darkness is no longer protection. The introduction of escort carriers proves decisive, small, slow, and utilitarian. These ships carry aircraft not to project power but to deny space. Their planes patrol ahead of convoys, sweep suspected contact zones, and force submarines to dive long before they can attack. Operators learn to read not just distance but intention changes in speed, sudden course alterations, depth fluctuations. A submarine attempting to slip away leaves a trail in sound. Each echo sharpens the picture. Dropped in calculated patterns, depth charges do not need to hit their target directly or force a submarine to surface. Even near misses are devastating. Inside a U-boat, lights shatter, pipes burst. Men are thrown against steel. Silence becomes terror. German crews feel the difference immediately. Radio transmissions report longer hunts. Fewer clean escapes. Boats return to base damaged, shaken, sometimes empty. Captains describe being held down for hours. Unable to surface, batteries draining, oxygen thinning. The Atlantic's pressure is no longer just physical, it is psychological. Losses begin to climb. In March 1943 alone, dozens of U-boats are sunk. Veteran commanders are lost, replaced by younger officers with fewer patrols and less confidence. At headquarters, Admiral Dönitz faces an impossible choice. To withdraw the U-boats is to surrender the Atlantic. To continue is to accept catastrophic losses. He orders tactical adjustments, deeper dives, tighter radio discipline, new countermeasures, but innovation now favors the Allies. This reality is felt not in statistics but in sound. The steady ping of sonar, the propellers above, the pause before impact. Survival now depends on luck as much as skill. By the spring of 1943, the Battle of the Atlantic reaches its turning point. The era of unchecked U-boat dominance is over. What remains are encounters intimate, terrifying, and final between steel hulls and calculated force. One such encounter will unfold in darkness, measured in seconds. When sonar achieves a perfect lock and escape disappears. Inside a submerged U-boat, time behaves differently. Minutes stretch, breaths are counted. Sweat pools along steel ribs as condensation drips steadily from the ceiling. Every unnecessary movement is a risk. Every sound could betray them. When sonar begins to ping, the crew feels it before they fully understand it. Not through hearing alone, but through tension. The knowledge that someone, somewhere above, is actively listening for their existence. Searching, closing. For the captain, command becomes an exercise in restraint. Panic kills faster than explosives. Orders are minimal: reduce speed, change depth, maintain silence. He watches the faces of his crew, gauging fear without acknowledging it. Morale here is fragile. It cannot be repaired at sea. Each echo that returns to the enemy tightens the invisible circle around them. The ocean, once a shield, now feels thin. Anti-submarine warfare in 1943 is no longer improvised. It is mathematical. American escorts operate in layered formations. Others position themselves ahead of the submarine's projected path. Speed, bearing, and depth are constantly recalculated. The goal is not to rush, but to contain. Sonar operators do not chase. They predict. Every change in the submarine's course leaves a signature. A sudden dive creates turbulence. A turn alters the echo's return. What the U-boat captain perceives as evasive maneuvering is translated above into data. Weapons follow logic, depth charges are dropped in patterns, not desperation. But newer systems are emerging forward-thrown projectiles like Hedgehog designed to maintain contact until the moment of impact. Misses are silent. Hits are unmistakable. This is the crucial shift. The boat no longer controls engagement distance. The escorts do. Relentless, command at depth is isolation taken to its extreme. A U-boat captain operates with limited information, no horizon, no visibility. Only instruments, intuition, and memory. He must trust his crew while knowing that one mistake from anyone ends everything. By 1943, leadership failures are rarely dramatic. They are cumulative. A captain who dives too deep strains the hull. One who stays shallow risks detection. A radio transmission that lasts seconds too long can summon aircraft hours later. The margin for error has evaporated. Meanwhile, Allied commanders enjoy an expanding picture of the battlefield. Intelligence flows upward and outward between ships, aircraft, and headquarters. Decisions are shared. Responsibility is distributed. This imbalance matters. The U-boat captain bears total accountability. When sonar locks on, there is no debate. Only acceptance. He does not freeze from fear but from calculation. From the realization that every option has already been anticipated. Silence returns briefly. A pause in the pings. Above escorts reposition. Below, men wait. The ocean holds its breath. And in that breath, the decisive moment begins to form. Above the submerged submarine, the war feels different, but no less tense. On the bridge of an American destroyer. The sea looks empty. Gray water, low clouds, nothing to see. Yet below the surface, a contact exists. Tracked, measured, and shared across headsets and plotting boards. The sonar operator is central now. Trained to recognize subtle changes in echo strength and delay, he becomes the ship's eyes beneath the waves. A steady return suggests constant depth. A fading signal hints at a turn. Even silence conveys information. When contact disappears suddenly, it often means the submarine has altered depth sharply, not vanished. American crews are taught patience. They do not rush to kill. They exhaust the enemy first. Each pass forces the U-boat deeper, slower, more desperate. Batteries drain, air grows foul. The submarine's options narrow with every minute held underwater. Coordination defines success. Orders flow calmly. Bearings are called out. Depth settings are adjusted. Each ship knows its role. This is no longer an individual duel. It is a system at work, built by the United States Navy and refined through relentless practice. For the hunters, fear exists, but it is managed, structured, and shared. The U-boat's greatest weapon has always been invisibility. In 1943, that advantage is eroding. Sonar does not merely detect, it denies escape. Even when a submarine slows to a crawl, its hull still reflects sound. Even at depth, pressure changes distort water layers, revealing movement. Silence no longer guarantees safety. Countermeasures are limited. German submarines deploy decoys, noisemakers intended to draw sonar away. Sometimes they work, often they do not. Allied crews learn to distinguish false echoes from real ones by behavior, not sound alone. A decoy drifts. A submarine maneuvers. The technological gap widens. Allied ships combine sonar with radar, intelligence, and air patrols. The U-boat, by contrast, carries its technology within a single fragile hull. If one system fails, there is no backup. Damage compounds quickly. Depth charges amplify this imbalance. Each explosion sends shock waves through water and steel. Gauges shatter, wiring loosens, minor leaks become serious. Even if the submarine survives, it is degraded slower, louder, more detectable. Technology no longer merely assists combat. It defines it, for both sides. This war beneath the waves carries a particular weight. There are no prisoners taken during a successful attack. When a submarine is destroyed at depth, its crew disappears instantly hundreds of meters below, crushed or drowned. Survivors are rare. Recovery is almost impossible. American sailors understand this. They are trained not to dwell on it. German crews understand it more intimately. Every sonar ping reminds them that survival depends on unseen strangers deciding when to release explosives. Courage remains, but it is compressed by inevitability. There is no charge forward, no retreat, only endurance. This moral tension shapes behavior. Some U-boat captains attempt aggressive countermaneuvers, hoping to break contact. Others remain passive, trusting silence and depth. Neither approach guarantees survival. The ocean is indifferent. By 1943, the Battle of the Atlantic has become less about heroics and more about systems overpowering individuals. Skill still matters, discipline still matters, but chance now favors the side that controls information. And when information converges, when sonar, calculation, and patience align, the encounter moves toward a single outcome. The pings return, closer than before. The final phase is about to begin. The sonar contact stabilizes above the submarine. The American destroyer reduces speed, careful not to outrun the Echo. The bearing holds steady. The range closes incrementally, measured in cold numbers relayed through headsets and repeated without emotion. Below, the U-boat descends. Ballast tanks flood. The deck tilts. Loose objects slide and clatter before hands grab them and force them still. The captain orders a deeper dive, not too fast. Speed creates noise. Noise creates certainty. Depth gauges creep downward. 100 meters, 120. 140. The hull begins to complain. Metal contracts under pressure, producing sharp pops that echo through the compartments like distant gunfire. Men flinch despite themselves. No one speaks. They have learned that even whispers feel loud at depth. Then the ping returns. Closer now. Louder, sharper. The sonar lock is no longer tentative. It is fixed. The American ship alters course slightly, a calculated move designed to stay ahead of the submarine's projected escape path. Another escort joins the pattern, closing the box. Above, propellers churn steadily. Below, the U-boat captain realizes what this means. They are being herded. He orders a turn to starboard, slow and deliberate. The helmsman obeys, easing the rudder to avoid cavitation. For a moment, hope flickers. The Echo wavers. The ping weakens. Then it sharpens again. The turn has been read. The escorts adjust. The geometry tightens. The ocean becomes smaller. Inside the submarine, systems are failing incrementally. Condensation drips into exposed wiring. Battery output drops as power is conserved. Carbon dioxide levels rise, bringing headaches and nausea. Men breathe shallowly, instinctively rationing air. The captain calculates silently. Depth is limited. Below them, the pressure hull approaches its tolerance. Above them, weapons wait. There is no safe layer left. Thermal boundaries that once bent sound have already been crossed. Another ping. Then another. The spacing changes. The sonar operator above reports a solid contact. Consistent depth, minimal speed. This is no longer a chase. It is a setup. On the destroyer's deck, sailors move with practiced efficiency. Depth charge racks are armed. Few settings are adjusted based on the last reported depth. The crew does not cheer. They do not rush. They have done this before. The first run begins. The destroyer passes directly over the submarine's estimated position. For a brief moment, the sonar loses contact as the ship crosses overhead. Below, the U-boat crew senses the shadow above, a subtle change in sound. A pressure shift in the water. Then the contact returns behind the ship. That is the signal. A mechanical clank echoes across the stern. The first depth charge enters the water. It sinks fast. Pulled downward by gravity and purpose, seconds pass. Inside the submarine, those seconds stretch impossibly long. Men grip pipes. One sailor presses his helmeted head against the steel bulkhead as if listening might change the outcome. The explosion does not hit directly. It does not need to. Water transmits force with merciless efficiency. Instruments shatter. A valve bursts, spraying seawater into the compartment. The submarine shudders like a living thing struck from the side. A second explosion follows. Closer. This one ruptures internal mounts. Batteries break free. Acid spills across the deck, releasing choking fumes. Men scramble to contain damage, hands shaking, training taking over where thought fails. The captain knows this pattern. This is not an attempt to kill immediately. It is an attempt to cripple. Above, the escorts circle back, sonar reacquiring the wounded submarine. The echo is different now, louder, less controlled. Damage has changed its signature. The American commander does not hesitate. Another run is ordered. Below. The depth gauge spins past safe limits. The hull screams under strain. Bolts begin to shear. Rivets groan. The ocean presses in from all sides. And with each passing second, survival becomes less a matter of tactics and more a matter of time. The decisive blows are coming. The second attack run is tighter. Above the submarine. The escorts have refined their solution. Sonar returns are strong, erratic proof of damage below. The target is slower now, drifting between control and collapse. This is the moment the system was designed for. Depth settings are adjusted again, not guesses. Calculations. The destroyer turns into the wind, aligns with the plotted track, and accelerates just enough to maintain position over the contact. On deck, the crew braces. There is no celebration. Only routine. Below, the U-boat fights itself. Pumps strain to expel water from flooded compartments. Electric motors whine under reduced power. The air is acrid now. Battery acid, diesel fumes, fear. Men cough into their sleeves, eyes burning, but continue their tasks. Training suppresses panic. For now. Another metallic clank. The captain does not look up. He knows what it means. The next depth charges fall in a tighter pattern closer together. Time to detonate at the depth the submarine has already reached. The first explosion strikes beneath the keel, lifting the boat violently before slamming it back down. Steel deforms. Bulkheads buckle, pipes tear loose. A seam opens along the pressure hull, thin at first then widening as water forces its way inside. The lights go out completely. Emergency lamps flicker on, casting red shadows across faces streaked with sweat and oil. The deck tilts sharply. Men lose their footing. This one is catastrophic. The shockwave collapses internal frames. Batteries rupture fully, flooding compartments with chlorine gas. Breathing becomes agony. Orders are shouted, now not from panic but necessity. There is no longer time for silence. The submarine begins an uncontrolled plunge. Depth gauges spin wildly. One needle snaps off entirely. The hull creaks under pressures it was never meant to endure. Each second brings the structure closer to failure. Above, sonar confirms it. The contact is dropping fast. This is not escape, this is collapse. The American commander gives the final order. Another pattern is released, not to search, but to finish. The explosions arrive in rapid succession. Inside the U-boat, the final moments are chaos without clarity. Men are thrown against steel. Water floods in faster than pumps can respond. Compartments seal automatically as pressure sensors trigger, trapping some inside, sealing others out. Then comes the sound no submariner ever forgets, a deep, resonant crack. The pressure hull fails. At depth, failure is instantaneous. The ocean does not rush and it implodes. Steel folds inward, air compresses violently. Temperatures spike for a fraction of a second before everything vanishes into darkness. There is no time to drown. There is no time to think. The U-boat ceases to exist as a vessel, becoming debris scattered across the seabed, unrecoverable, unmarked, anonymous. The contact is gone. Only an oil slick rises hours later, spreading thinly across the gray water, a quiet signature of destruction. The American ships log the kill, mark the position, and resume their patrol. Another submarine removed from the Atlantic. Another convoy safer, at least for now, for the German Navy. This is one loss among many. For the men inside the U-boat, it is the end of everything. And for the Battle of the Atlantic, it is confirmation. The ocean has changed sides. The sinking is recorded in ink. Not emotion. A position is marked on a chart. Time, coordinates. Estimated tonnage destroyed, none. Enemy submarine eliminated, confirmed. The escort group moves on. Because the convoy must keep moving. In the Atlantic of 1943, there is no pause for reflection. For the United States Navy, encounters like this are no longer exceptional, they are becoming routine. Hunter-killer groups continue to sweep ahead of convoys, probing suspected patrol lines, forcing submarines to dive long before they can strike. Escort carriers cycle aircraft overhead. The system absorbs fatigue and replaces losses efficiently. Statistics begin to tell a grim story. In the spring of 1943, German U-boat losses spike dramatically. Boats fail to return from patrol. Radio silence stretches from days into weeks. Headquarters waits, then records them as missing. Entire crews, dozens of men at a time, vanish without survivors. Without graves, for the German Navy, these losses are irreplaceable. Each U-boat requires months to build. Each crew requires years to train. Veteran commanders, once the backbone of the submarine arm, are gone. Their replacements lack experience, confidence, and often faith in the mission itself. Reports from returning boats reveal a consistent pattern. Sonar contact maintained for hours, multiple attack runs. No clean escapes. Crews describe being driven deep repeatedly, forced to choose between suffocation and destruction. Some boats surface deliberately, preferring capture to implosion. Others are hunted until something gives. Morale deteriorates quietly. There are no mutinies, no open defiance. But patrol reports grow cautious. Aggression fades. Captains become conservative, breaking off attacks earlier, avoiding convoys they might once have stalked. At headquarters, Admiral Karl Dönitz studies the numbers. What he sees is unavoidable. The U-boat fleet is bleeding faster than it can strike. Sinkings no longer offset losses. The tonnage war, the central metric of success, has turned against Germany. The Allies are building ships faster than submarines can destroy them. The strategic consequence is immediate. Convoys grow larger and more frequent. Supplies reach Britain and the Soviet Union in increasing volume. Fuel, vehicles, food, and men cross the ocean with rising confidence. The Atlantic, once a bottleneck, begins to flow. For Allied sailors, the psychological shift is profound. Fear does not disappear, but it changes shape. The sense of helplessness that defined the early war years fades. Training and technology provide reassurance. Losses still occur, but they are no longer one-sided. The ocean no longer belongs to the unseen enemy. Yet for the families of U-boat crews, there is only absence. Letters stop coming. Official notifications are brief, impersonal, final. No bodies are returned. No wrecks recovered. The sea keeps everything it takes. Each sinking, like the one just recorded, adds to a silent accumulation of lost steel coffins resting miles below the surface. Their locations known only to charts and memory. And still, the war demands continuation. More boats sail. More escorts deploy. The cycle repeats, but the balance has shifted permanently. What remains is to understand how this change reshaped the entire course of the war at sea, and what it meant for those who fought it on both sides. By the summer of 1943, the transformation of the Atlantic is complete. German submarine deployments continue, but their purpose has changed. Patrols are shorter. Operating areas are restricted. Commanders are instructed to avoid heavily defended convoys and withdraw at the first sign of sustained resistance. The initiative that once defined U-boat warfare is gone. Admiral Dönitz makes the decision he has resisted for years. The majority of U-boats are pulled back from the North Atlantic. It is not a surrender, but it is an admission. The battle that once promised to strangle Britain has become unwinnable under existing conditions. This withdrawal carries consequences far beyond the ocean. With the Atlantic supply lines secured, the Allies gain freedom of movement on a global scale. Troops and equipment move in volumes previously impossible. Amphibious operations can now be planned with confidence rather than desperation. The land war feels the effect almost immediately. Armored divisions in North Africa receive consistent resupply. Strategic bombing campaigns over Europe intensify as fuel and aircraft flow across the ocean. Most critically, preparations begin for a massive cross-channel invasion, an operation that would have been unthinkable without control of the sea. At sea, Allied anti-submarine doctrine continues to evolve. Technology improves, incrementally better sonar resolution, more reliable weapons, tighter coordination, but the core principle remains unchanged. Deny submarines the ability to approach unseen. The lessons learned in 1943 shaped naval warfare for generations. For the German Navy, the psychological damage lingers. Submarine service remains among the most dangerous assignments of the war. Survival rates plummet. Crews sail knowing that the odds are against them. Faith in technology erodes. Faith in strategy fades. Courage remains, but it is no longer accompanied by belief. Loss reports accumulate. Entire flotillas are reduced to names on lists. Bases along the French coast grow quieter as fewer boats return. Veterans are gone, replaced by trainees who have never known success. The mythology of the U-boat ace collapses under the weight of reality. For the Allied sailors who participated in these hunts, memory is complicated. They remember the routine calculations, sonar pings, attack runs. They also remember the aftermath, oil slicks, floating debris, silence. Victory at sea is rarely visible. It is inferred. The ocean does not celebrate. It absorbs. By the end of 1943, the Battle of the Atlantic is no longer a question of outcome but of endurance. Germany will continue to fight. Submarines will continue to sink ships, but the decisive phase has passed. Control of the Atlantic now rests firmly with the Allies. The moment when sonar locked on and the ocean exploded was not unique. It was representative, a single encounter within a vast campaign, but one that illustrates how technology, coordination, and patience overcame stealth and courage. What remains is to step back to reflect on what this invisible war beneath the waves revealed about humanity. Warfare and the cost of mastery over the sea. The Atlantic is calm again, at least on the surface. Below, thousands of meters of cold water conceal the wreckage of steel vessels. Each one is a silent monument to a war fought in shadow and pressure. The men inside gone, remembered only in lists, reports, and the faint ripple of memory and families far away leave behind lessons heavier than any depth charge. The Battle of the Atlantic was more than a contest of ships and submarines. It was a contest of perception and patience, of mathematics and instinct, of silence against sound. Technology had begun to surpass human courage. Sonar, radar, and coordinated attack patterns did not merely assist strategy, they defined it. Skill mattered, but increasingly it was skill wielded within a system larger than any individual. For the German U-boat crews, the ocean had transformed from ally to adversary. Every echo, every pulse, every shadow beneath the waves reminded them of vulnerability. For the American sailors, the same waters offered structure and control. They learned to measure the invisible, to act on data as decisively as on sight. The hunter became methodical, the hunted exposed. The sinking of a single submarine locked by sonar, crushed by depth charges, embodies this transformation. It is cinematic in horror and precision alike, a moment where physics, technology, and human endurance intersect. Yet the calm afterward is equally telling. The sea absorbs, indifferent, continuing its rhythm. The violence exists only in human perception and consequence. Ultimately, the Atlantic in 1943 teaches that mastery of war is not merely a matter of weapons or courage. It is a matter of information, adaptation, and patience. The hunters above could project control. The hunted below were bound by limitations invisible at the outset. The ocean remained impartial, but the balance of power shifted irreversibly. And in that shift lies a truth about warfare itself. Victory is not always loud. Sometimes it is measured in silence. In echoes, in the way the water holds memory long after the explosion fades.